Hello everyone. In this video, I will talk about XML serialization. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language and is used primarily for storing or transferring structured data. The structure of XML is very similar to HTML. The similarities between JSON and XML are that they both are human readable data interchange format, but there are also some comparisons between them. XML is considered more verbose than JSON. So the data file that is generated is bigger in size. That's why JSON is more preferred for web-based services. And XML is considered to handle complex data structure better than JSON. The serialization and deserialization is relatively more costly for XML compared to JSON, especially on mobile devices. More APIs use JSON, like Facebook Graph API, Twitter API, Google Maps API, while XML is more prevalent for desktop applications. So for things like saving your player preference or saving your game settings, XML would likely be a better option than JSON on a PC. To demonstrate XML serialization inside Unity, I'm going to use the same setup from my last video about JSON serialization, whose link will be in the description below. It is important that you check out that video beforehand. To give you a quick overview, here is my player data class, which has three variables, and this class is that we want to serialize and save this data over game sessions. These input fields are used to set value of the three variables of our player data class, and when we click on the serialize button, it takes the player data object, serializes it, and saves it as a file. In the next game session, when we press the deserialize button, it reads the saved data, deserializes the data, and recreates our player data object, whose values you can again see in the input fields. Our serialization test script from the past video, which handles all the linkages between input fields and the buttons logic, everything and every logic will remain the same. The only thing that is going to change is our serialize and deserialize function, where now we are going to serialize using XML instead of JSON. Next, I will comment out our old JSON serialization code, and we are going to write the XML serialization code in its place inside our same serialize and deserialize function. XML serializer comes with .NET, and we need to include system.xml.serialization namespace in order to access the necessary functions. And also don't forget to add the system.serializable attribute before the class that you want to serialize, which is our player data class. The class responsible for our operations is called XML Serializer, and we will need an object of that class in order to perform the operation. So let's create a new object of the type XML Serializer using the new keyword, and the XML Serializer will take the type of the object that you are going to serialize. So if you want to serialize an object of the type player data, you will have to specify right at the time where you are creating your XML serializer. So here we will have to provide it with type of player data, and now we have the serializer object. Unlike JSON serializer, which returns a string, XML serializer will return a stream, which can be a text stream or a file stream. Here, since we want to write our serialized data into a file, we are going to need a file stream, and a file stream can be created using the file stream class. The constructor of our new file stream will first take a path which determines the location and the file name where your newly created file will be stored. So let's give it a new name, player data xml.xml. The next argument is the file mode, which specifies whether you want to create a new file or whether you are opening a new file. So for this case, we will use file mode dot create because we are creating a new file and writing our serialized data into that file. Now, when we have our serializer and our stream, the function to serialize is actually serializer dot serialize. The first argument it takes is your stream, which in this case is our file stream, and the second argument it takes is your object that you want to serialize, which in this case is our player data. The final thing I need to do is to close the stream, which I can do that by writing stream.close. This will close my stream and write the file stream as an actual file onto my disk, and based on my file name or the path specified in at the point of creation of my file stream. So in this case, it will create a new file called player data xml at the location where my assets folder is located inside my Unity project. So let's come into the Unity play mode and check our XML serialization. Just like our JSON video, we will set some values inside our player data, then hit serialize, and then we will check in outside our Unity project at how our XML file looks. So let's give it some values and hit serialize. Here is our player data XML file. Let's open it inside Visual Studio, and this is our XML data. A XML document is divided between different elements, and these elements are structured like a tree. Every element will start with a tag and it will end with a tag of the same name, just with a slash. So here is my name element, and inside the tags it will have the actual value of that variable. So the name variable will hold the value Robert. Similarly for the age and for the gender. The deserialization operation is very similar. We first create a XML serializer object, providing it with our class type that we want to deserialize. So we can write XML serializer and give it the type of our object, which in this case is player data. Next we need a file stream which will read the data stored in the same file where we serialized our object, and we can do that by creating a new file stream, and in the file stream constructor we are going to provide it with the same file path so that it reads from the file that we just created. And the only thing different here would be our file mode. In the serialization function we are using the file mode.create because we want to create a new file and save our XML data, but in the process of deserialization we are going to read the XML data stored in the file at this location. So the file mode appropriate here would be file mode dot open. Now when we have the serializer and the stream, the process of deserialization is simply serializer dot deserialize, and the argument it takes is your file stream, and this will return an object, but we want the return object to be of the type player data, so we need to cast this as player data, and then we can feed it directly to our player data object, just like we did during our JSON deserialization example. Next we'll copy paste the code to put the deserialized values into our input field so that we can visually see what values we are getting from our XML file. So we can copy this much of code, which is just filling up our input fields with the deserialized data. Next, we can come inside the Unity play mode, and we should expect that the data, the values that are stored inside our player data XML file, the values like the name should be Robert, the age should be 45, and gender male. This should be reflected when we hit deserialize, and these input fields will be filled with those values. So let's go into the play mode and hit deserialize. So you can see that we can read XML data stored inside a file. We can deserialize it, create a new uh, object of the type player data, and then we can visualize the values stored inside our player data. So this was a brief overview of simple XML serialization and deserialization in Unity. In the next video, I will show you how to serialize lists or arrays using XML.